Ahoy hoy, I'm Planet Walk, and today we're going to finish going over the Flat Earth Answers video. Where we left off was the questions and answers section, which had a lot of questions, but not as many answers, and no good answers at that. So I could probably debunk this meme in a short, but let's do it here because why not? That is not a strange path for the ISS. The only reason why it looks strange is because of the projection used. On a globe, the path ends up being rather circular because it's in orbit. And also, it's not a perfect circle, so this representation here is not correct.
Clouds behind the sun.
Clouds don't go behind the sun, it's just that the sun is a really bright object, so a decent amount of its light gets through the clouds. In case you haven't noticed, clouds are not opaque, which is why you can see through some of them. Also, the sun cannot be at the same height as the clouds, because I have flown in a plane at midday. I had to look upwards to see the sun. We're flying above the clouds.
Truth hidden in plain sight.
The whole, southern hemisphere flights make more sense on a flat Earth cannot be used at this point. The reason being is because it's become so much of a joke at this point that flat earthers have had to explain why there are non-stop flights in the southern hemisphere. And their explanation is trade winds, which don't make sense because those flights go both ways, not just one. They've even tried to say it doesn't make sense on a globe, but it makes perfect sense on a flat earth because trade winds. That's how much of a joke that argument is.
What about places such as Alaska, which receives periods of 24 hours sunlight, followed by months of total darkness? As previously shown, the sun acts as a spotlight, rotating around the flat Earth.
Okay, that explains it in the northern hemisphere, but what about in the southern hemisphere? Because the exact same thing happens here. In fact, during the summer here in New Zealand, I can look to the southeast and see the sun rising, the sun travels to the north, and then sets in the southwest. I've yet to hear a good explanation for this. The best one that I've heard is that there is a giant space mirror that reflects the sun. However, that's only the best one because it's so funny.
Notice how much more darkened the sky has become already, even with the sun still clearly visible in the sky above.
Well, the reason why the sky becomes darker even with the sun still in the sky is simply due to less light hitting the atmosphere. That is because that bit of the Earth is now at a different angle relative to the sun.
During the summer solstice, the sun would appear to never fully set, as it would always be rotating close to the center of the Earth.
Obviously, that still fails to account for the 24-hour sunlight that you see in Antarctica. Another issue that you run into is that it can be used to calculate when the sun should set at any given location on a flat Earth. And at the equator on the equinox on a flat Earth, you find that the sun should set before 6 PM, which we do not observe. And this discrepancy gets even worse the further south you go.
What about people who have circumnavigated the world?
So my first thought with that was, maybe we might hear a flat earther finally address pole-to-pole circumnavigation, but if I had to guess, they're probably just going to say, yeah, that's never happened or something.
This is probably the most common question I hear, yet the easiest to understand. First, we need to establish the equator line. And you will notice, all points remain exactly the same. The only difference is the South Pole.
Okay, so I know that I'm skipping parts, but the parts that I'm skipping are the parts where nothing is being said. We establish an equator line and the points on that equator line remain the same, but the difference is the South Pole. What does the South Pole have to do with it? Do they mean the same distance to each other? If so, then say the same distance to each other. Don't just say the same.
So, let's bear east and see what happens. Congratulations, you have just circumnavigated the Earth.
Okay, but what about pole-to-pole circumnavigation? Are you going to address that? Because pole-to-pole circumnavigation has been done. And also, do you think that sailors just wouldn't notice that they have to keep on turning north to go east? Because that would be something that you'd probably pick up on.
The only way to prove the Earth was round would be to travel independently via north and south. And you only need to ask those who have attempted before to find out what happens when you do.
Do you mean like the One More Orbit team who successfully managed to circumnavigate the globe from pole to pole?
Jarl Andhoy was arrested in Chile after sailing into Antarctic waters for the second time in 2 years.
So Jarl Andhoy wasn't trying to circumnavigate the world. That's not something that he ever intended to do as far as I can tell. He was arrested, but that's because he didn't have a permit. If he had have gotten a permit, then maybe he would have been allowed to travel to Antarctica.
So, is there any actual evidence of the dome itself?
Oh, this is going to be interesting because the only thing they ever say is something like the second law of thermodynamics. By saying this, they completely ignore the fact that the atmosphere has a pressure gradient, so let's see what they've got for this one.
Job 26:10. He hath compassed the waters with bounds.
That is not evidence. The only person that that's going to convince is someone who believes in the Bible and believes that the Bible is meant to be taken literally.
One of the most amazing things that I have ever seen in the bottom of the ocean. It was while filming for Blue Planets in the Gulf of Mexico. I saw this donut. It was black in the center. What the heck is that? This band was a ring of mussels. And inside the ring of mussels was a lake. We went out over the water in this lake and tried to descend it. And top stuff. It was so super saline and dense that the submarine couldn't go down it.
So, saline water in the ocean is a dome? I feel like I'm losing my mind watching this. I swear I could just throw a bouncy ball at a glass wall, and flat earthers would take that as evidence that a dome covers the entire Earth. They're using movies. Their evidence is movies. Like, have they not seen movies where the Earth is a globe? Because if this is their evidence, then that really should be enough to convince them. Another movie. I'm very much doubting that this flat earther has the capacity to distinguish non-fiction from fiction. Like, they probably saw The Truman Show and thought that it was a documentary. Oh god, he's going to use The Truman Show as evidence, isn't he? Okay, even if I give you that Game of Thrones is a documentary instead of a fiction show, that's an ice wall, not a dome. I'm pretty sure Game of Thrones doesn't even have a dome in the show, so that's not good evidence of a dome. That's in fact not evidence of a dome at all, even if we do say that it's a documentary. Look, The Truman Show is fiction, not a documentary. How many times do I have to explain that? How many fictional things are they going to use as evidence of a dome existing in reality? I mean, Under the Dome is still fiction. They haven't stopped using fiction. I feel like the flat earther, when compiling these, was going, oh, this is so much evidence that there is a dome. But instead, we've just got evidence that isn't even evidence because it's fiction. In fact, you might as well just use Terry Pratchett's Discworld series and say that's evidence that the flat earth exists on the back of 4 elephants on top of a turtle. Flat earthers will try to deny it, but this flat earther taught me that fiction is basically evidence, so obviously there is a turtle that we all live on the back of.
Do you know how to fly those?
Absolutely. Do you get to fly to the edge? Oh yeah.
Again, fiction. I was excited when I saw voice audio coming up because I thought there was actually going to be something that wasn't fiction. Are they trying to tell us that flat earth is just fiction?
Part 4. The Bible.
Okay, yeah, so their whole argument for the dome existing is fiction and an underwater lake. In fact, that evidence for the dome was so bad that to avoid ever hearing it again, I am going to give you all evidence that the dome exists. Are you ready?
CGI.
It may have been a little bit hard to notice, but there was clearly a dome in that clip. So obviously you need to use that as evidence because otherwise you're not going to convince anyone if you just keep on citing fiction.
Isaiah 40:22. It is he who sits above the circle of the earth.
Okay, so I'm not a Christian, so citing Bible verses as a reason for the earth being flat is not going to convince me. But even if I agree that the Bible is real, I mean, of course, I mean, the Bible is real, but like, even if I agree that the stuff in the Bible is all true, that doesn't necessarily mean that your interpretation of those things is the correct interpretation. I mean, he who sits above the circle of the earth. A sphere is a type of circle.
Job 38:14. It is like clay under the seal, and its features stand out like a garment.
So I searched this Bible verse up to see what it actually said, and the first result said, the earth takes shape like clay under a seal. Its features stand out like those of a garment. So it's not saying that earth is like clay under a seal. It's saying that it takes shape like clay under a seal. You see, the problem with using Bible verses for evidence that the earth is flat, or even for evidence that the earth is a globe, is that these can be interpreted in different ways. You see, I could interpret a Bible verse as saying one thing, but someone else can interpret it as saying something completely different based on what we already think about the world. This becomes very apparent when Christians debate certain issues and they try to use the Bible as justification for what they believe. When that happens, two Christians can read the exact same Bible verse, but come to very different conclusions about what it means. One that is very fun to do this with is one in Numbers, because it's very clearly talking about getting an abortion, yet a lot of conservative Christians will deny that.
Revelations 20:1. Then I saw an angel coming down from heaven, holding in his hand the key to the bottomless pit.
I don't see how that Bible verse supports flat earth in any way, because are you saying that there's a bottomless pit somewhere on earth? Anyway, I think I'm going to leave it there because the rest is just Bible verses and people interpret the Bible in different ways. Flat earthers just interpret in a way that says, oh look, the earth is flat. As someone who is not a Christian, using the Bible to try and support your position does nothing whatsoever to convince me. But anyway, leave a like and subscribe if you like this video. Leave a comment letting me know what you'd like to see me do in future videos. As always, a big shout out to my $20 or more patrons: Hugh Jarsz, M.C.Nutkin, Morrie, Nathaniel Muller, Vermont1777, Tony C, Rosyna Keller, Wolfie, KidVicious, Sacha Campbell, definitely not NASA, Craig D'Amelio, Richard M Chapman, Kaylee, and FistWizard. If you want to support me financially, you can do so on Patreon. There should be a link there. But anyway, I will see you in the next video. Between you and me, thank you for watching.